He was part of this group, social group, but not really social. It was more of a cult. They were called forest philosophers. So let's kind of break that down a little bit. For those of you who've ever gone to Yosemite, for those of you who once in a while get to campus early and walk around the estuary behind the swimming pool, there are lots of beautiful trees. There's a pool of water, sometimes smells, but for the most part, it's really nice. Ducks float on it, birds come by and eat the ducks, and ducks eat the birds. So it's a really, really nice place. And when you walk in the woods, it's as if the world disappears. You know, you're surrounded by nature, you're surrounded by the innocence and the purity of nature. Something about you just calms down and just relaxes. That's what nature does. That for whatever the reasons are, ocean or water, trees or forest, if you've ever been to Yosemite or just like hiking in the woods, there is something about nature that removes society and all the social components out of you. That you can sit there sometimes, as Henry David Thoreau would say, you kind of just pray to the forest, you pray to the river, you watch the leaves dance for you, and you watch the trees sing for you. Hello. And you realize as if all you need really in life is just to be in nature, to be in forest. You don't need anything else. It completes you. It puts you in this place of contentment, which is really difficult to kind of find when you are in the busyness of life. You come to class and you got to go work, and you got to make dinner. You're always on the run. And for those of you who've never been to the forest or Yosemite, my recommendation is when winter breaks comes about, just grab a couple of your friends or your parents or your siblings, get in the car, and just drive to Yosemite. And the nice thing about winter is that you have an added advantage. The snow has blanketed the entire forest. And if you're lucky, where the sky is clear and the moon comes out at night, the snow turns blue, and it's like the Garden of Eden. It's absolutely beautiful. And sometimes if you happen to be kind of in the right place, you're around the right people, in the right mood, something about it just breaks open. Sometimes you pray to something you hardly know. Sometimes you cry and you don't even know why you cry. But that's what forest does to you. It baptizes you in a very, very strange way. And I suppose you could say it's like you're Jesus Christ, you know, in the 21st century sometimes. So that's what forest is. And then you have this other word called philosopher or philosophy. I don't want to get too much into defining or explaining what philosophy is at this stage. We're not there yet. But a philosopher is someone who's not really, there are different kinds of philosophers. There are those thinkers who, they're kind of like Angela Davis, for those of you who may know, one of the founders of Black Panthers. Okay. She is a thinker about social reformation. How do you make justice in society? How do you create equality in society? Then you have other kinds of thinkers where they realize that there is a tremendous amount of homelessness in Oakland, for example, or poverty in Oakland. And they use their brain power to figure out how we could get rid of homelessness, how we could feed people. Then you have another set of thinkers who come to realize that people have different kinds of addictions, substance abuse. Okay, and so they use their brain power to figure out how best we can get these people through rehab. Right? Then you have a certain group of people who are religious by nature, and they're not religious because they want to run away. They're not religious because they want to cope with certain disasters of life, like not having a father or a mother or a this or a that. They really simply want to understand what lives inside the mind of God, and they read a lot of books. And then there are these kinds of thinkers who say, you know what, I am on this journey to figure out what wisdom is. It's not about food, it's not about money, it's not about fame, it's not about poverty, absence of food, clothing, and shelter. It's not about substance abuse, it's not about religion, it's about wisdom, something that we don't know and we can't touch. You see, if you say you want to be religious, well, you can read the Bible, you can read the Quran, you can read the Dhammapada, you can read the Rig Veda. The maps are there, there are the signposts. You can go to one of these books and figure out which one you like. But when it comes to wisdom, for example, you try to find wisdom in books, you couldn't. You try to find it in sacred texts, you couldn't. And now you realize you're in the middle of the forest. That's where we get the name Panic. It's an ancient god, Pan, that when you find yourself in this forest, it's dark, the woods are giant, the trees are. It's frightening because you have no idea where to go, what to do in the midst of, all of this mess called the forest. Because you feel really so small and so insignificant. And all the meanings that you had given yourself previously before going to the forest, they all disappear once you're there. So Martin Heidegger basically comes from this tradition that first, he lives in the forest, if not physically, certainly mentally and emotionally. Second, he's a philosopher. He likes to think, he likes to examine, he likes to break things open. For those of you in this class who have children, you know how they work. You take them to Target, you buy them a toy, and then they bring this toy home and they bang it on the floor and they open it and you say, damn it, I just spent $30 on this toy and you broke it. And your son, your daughter looks at you and says, well, I wanted to know what lives inside this toy, what makes it move. You see, oh my God, it's the blind dog?
Yeah, I
know. It matches you. It looks really good.
Thank you.
Where do you get those shoes?
Crocs, Amazon.
How much?
About 30. Or they used to be 30. I don't know how much they cost now.
What are they called?
Crocs.
I know, but is there like a name for that particular, just like rainbow Crocs?
Yeah, it's Heideggar.
All right. So, Martin Heidegger was a sort of a thinker who held nothing sacred, who believed that everything needs to be cracked completely open so you can see what's inside, so you can look at it, be amazed by it, be in awe of it. If you want to know what's sacred in life, it's not God, it's not religion. What's sacred is the human imagination, the courage to break something open and ask, why is it the way it is? It's easy to believe, you see, but it's very difficult to examine why you believe in what you believe. It's not very difficult to fall in love. It's just very difficult to ask yourself, why do you fall in love? And why do you fall in love with that particular person? Okay? Now, so Martin Heidegger has this idea that those people who are able to use their brains well, who are able to think well, who have the courage to kind of walk into life and break things open because they desire to understand things from the inside. Do you see? For those of you in this class who have ever read the book of Job, it's a beautiful book because Job imagined that he believed, imagined that he was a man of faith. He imagined himself to be righteous. But when little by little things were taken away from him, he demanded justice. He couldn't simply accept. Because you see, if you're a faithful human being and you believe in God, you're taught to believe that all things come from God. Accept. Have faith. It's really easy to believe in all of that when you're not touched, when you're not forced to examine, when you're not pushed. All of us believe that we are great parents, but that's before you have kids. And then you have kids, you realize, oh my God, I don't have patience, I don't have money, I don't have all the things that are required to raise a healthy child. Okay? None of us can understand anything in privilege, only in poverty. When you lose things, then you realize, okay, that you are insufficient. You need tools, you need resources, you need understanding, you need help. Okay? Now, so Martin Heidegger argues that the only way that people can truly begin to examine things is when they are in the presence of something that devastates everything under the sun. It's called being unto death. One of the followers of Jesus Christ that came forth around the 15th century, that's about 1,500 years later, his name was Martin Luther King. As a young man, he came to realize that the way that Christianity is being taught to people is just wrong. You know, you can't just read the book and say, my sins are gone. You can't just go to the Pope and the Pope says your sins are gone and therefore your sins are gone. It doesn't work that way. Martin Luther has this concept. It's called, what is it called? It's called sudden death. Now, let's break these words down. Sudden. Remember, all of us in this class, we are in search of power. You see Zion here? She was in class on Tuesday, or maybe last week, Wednesday, and she said, there is this dog. She is blind. I need someone to adopt this dog. But the dog has a sister. So if you adopt this dog, you need to adopt this other dog as well. She was advertising this dog to the rest of us, do you see? But then something very strange happened. She kept looking at the dog, and she kept looking at the dog, and she kept looking at the dog and talking to the good dog and petting the dog and feeding the dog. And all of a sudden, she said, why don't I adopt the dog?
Adopted her brother before they adopted her.
So, sudden. It means you're not expecting. You're not planning. It's not part of your framework. And then all of a sudden, there is an opening, and suddenly you say, I need to do this. It is unexpected. It's like you're not planning to get pregnant, all of a sudden you get pregnant. You're not planning to get into a car accident, all of a sudden you get into a car accident. So remember, the word sudden means despite your best efforts to live, to be 100, to remain healthy, to see your kids graduate, okay? Suddenly you realize all of those plans are being trashed. Now, if you happen to be a human being who are courageous enough to live in this thing called sudden, it means make your plans. Also accept the fact that at any time, something else is going to knock on your door, force the door open, and barge into your life. And once that thing happens suddenly to you, you have a couple of options. And that depends on how mature you are. You could either throw a temper tantrum, or you could sit back and relax and say, okay, I wasn't planning for this, but let's see what we can do. You know, it's like most of you in this class will eventually go home today, and you've made some food from last night that's in the fridge. And as you're walking home, you say, well, I'm going to go home, open the fridge, grab the pizza, warm it up, and eat it. And then you go home, you open the fridge, the pizza isn't there. Right? What happened to the pizza? And your wife or your husband, your companion says, oh, I'm sorry, I ate it, I was so hungry. Now you have a couple of options. You can either start using profanities, okay, to assault and harass your companion for having eaten the pizza without your permission, or you say, it's okay, I know, people are hungry, things happen. You open the cupboard or the fridge, you grab some eggs, some onions, some mushrooms, and make yourself an omelet. The only way that you and I can do well with suddens, if you have the resources and if you have the know-how. If you don't, it's a mess. So remember, the word sudden means something you're not expecting, but it happens. Death. Death is an ending. It's an ending, however, that has no closure. This is important. See, it's one thing for me to be 80, to look at my life and say, I think everything is in order. Okay? I've made my will. I've seen my kids graduate from school. They have companions, they have kids, they have houses. Okay? I was a good son to my parents, a good brother to my brother, a good brother to my sister. My life is relatively okay. I am done. And so when death comes to me, I am ready. Death doesn't come to me suddenly. And if it does, I embrace it really, really well. There was a guy in 1985. They lived by the car wash in Roseville. He was Indian. And he would walk every day for about half hour to an hour. And one day he stops by and he says, oh, where are you guys from? I said, I'm from Iran. Where are you from? You're from India. He says, yeah. I said, yeah, I used to live in India, Dehradun, and went to Bombay and Calcutta, but lived in Mysore for a number of years. So what are you doing? I asked him. He says, well, I came here for my daughter. She's married. They have great kids. And he was 75. He says, there is nothing for me to do anymore. I am ready to die. Okay, the only thing he was hoping for was for a good death. You close your eyes and you just don't wake up. Martin Luther, around the 15th century, his concept of sudden death is this. And remember, he is a religious man. He was a monk. His father sent him to school to be a lawyer, to make money, to become prosperous. Remember the saying, what benefit is there for man or human beings to gain the whole world but lose their own soul? His father was a lawyer saying, go in the world, gain the world. We don't need that much of a soul, but become rich. But you see, Martin Luther was suffering from the psychic tension. He wanted to understand. He wanted intimacy with God. He wanted the words in the Bible to come to life for him. For those of you who know the story of John, son of Zebedee, one of the closest disciples of Jesus, okay, the thing that he says to Jesus is, these ideas were never meant to be written in stone. They were meant to be written in human hearts, to be alive. And that's what Martin Luther wanted. The ideas to come to life inside him. The spirit of the law, do you see? So sudden death for him means the following. All of us in this class are lazy. We are slothful. We don't think well. We don't really know why we believe in the things we believe. The only thing we know is that we believe because it makes us feel good. It gives us meaning. It gives us purpose. Whether or not they are true, who cares? How they came about, who cares? Just think for a moment. If any of you were born 100 years ago, say in India, there is a good chance you would have never had heard of Jesus Christ. You would not be a Christian. You would be a Hindu. You wouldn't know much about racism. You wouldn't know much about America. You would have a different set of issues. But you wouldn't pray to Jesus. Maybe Vishnu, maybe Krishna. You wouldn't know what a church was, but you would go to a temple. You would not worship one God, but a million gods. Do you see? We are purely accidental. Change your parents, you'd be a completely different human being. Instead of being born in Oakland to parents who don't care for you, be born in Montclair in gated community. Parents who love you. The anger that may live inside you now would not exist. All the things that you and I believe in are circumstantial. They're not really up to us. Do you see? So Martin Luther argues the following. Imagine you are walking and you are lazy in thinking, in examining, in being. And all of a sudden you have a thought. And the thought is this. What if I was to suddenly have a stroke and die? Did I live my life meaningfully? Did I get into the right relationships? Do I have the right friendships? Do I know what the heck I believe in? Do I have closure if death was to suddenly come upon me? Or am I going to be fearful? Am I going to be incomplete? Okay? It's a profound idea that those of us in this class who think that our lives are meaningful live with the presence of death for just a moment. Not just thinking about it, but feeling it. It means you internalize it. If I was to die now, what happens is you have to go back and look at your life. Okay? Now, surely there are some of us in this class who have accepted all of our sins that we have committed in the past. We know why we committed those crimes against ourselves, our parents, our humanity at large. We understand them. We respect them. We embrace them. But many of us who live an unexamined life, we have difficulty. So we begin to bargain with God. No, death, not right now. Give me a week. Give me 2 months. You know, my parents called me a couple weeks ago and said to me, Amir, you need to come to Roseville. I said, Mom, I'm in Oakland. I'm teaching. You need to come to Roseville quickly. Why? I want to give you a copy of our will. What do you mean? We went somewhere, we paid this much money, this lawyer did A, B, C, D, you need a copy. Why? It's just good to have a copy of this will. Why? Just in case we die, you know exactly who gets what, when. Now, why do people need to have wills? Because my mom, an experienced, seasoned woman, knows what happens to people when they have money. Brother goes against brother. Brother goes against sister. Everything falls apart. Okay? To make sure that our relationship remains cohesive, harmonious, healthy, he says, you're going to get 30%, she's going to get 30%, he's going to get 30%. That's it. But they want to put their life in order before they're dead. But Martin Luther was talking about something very, very different. None of us in this class are ready for death. Zion is 18. Eli is 20. Charles is 21. Julian is 24. B has kids to raise. We all have hopes and dreams. We are looking to a future that's uncertain, but we certainly make plans. And we will never allow sudden to move into it. Okay? Now, what happens when you internalize this concept called death? You become authentic. Authentic means the following. Imagine death to be Satan in the gospel, in the book of Job. What does Satan do? Satan knows that Job loves his animals. Satan knows that Job loves his belief system in God and religion and all of that. Satan knows that Job loves his kids. Satan knows that Job loves his wife. How does Satan baptize Job? He forces him to examine his life and his faith. So what does he do? Remember, this is what death does. This is how authenticity, clarity of thought, clarity of emotions, true and pure and sincere poverty comes about. First, he takes the animals. Mrs. Job comes and says, "Curse God. Why is this happening?" And Job says, "Woman, you and I don't know what lives in the mind of God. We must accept." Satan goes back up. God says, "Did you see? My faithful favorite servant did not blaspheme." And Satan laughs and says, "No, God, I don't think you truly understand." See, God thought that he knew Job, and Job thought he knew God. But it's Satan who's the real teacher, you see. So Satan goes back down, and what happens? Okay? Now his kids are butchered. Mrs. Job comes forth and says, "Curse God and die." And you know what Job says? "No. Naked we came, and naked we shall go." We don't know what lives in the mind of God. And here's the thing you need to understand. When someone takes something from you, my phone, I can always replace it. If someone takes my children from me in an accident, for example, and they die, I will be sad. I will be grieving. I will mourn. But here's the thing about time. Time will help me recover. But when I go to the doctor and the doctor says, "Amir, you have stage 4 cancer," it's no longer my phone. It's no longer my kids. It's no longer my wife. It is me. It is my time. It is my hopes. It is my dreams. It is my life, man. I was pissed when God took my kids away. I was pissed when God took my wife away. But why me? I have hopes. I have dreams. What the hell did I do wrong that now I am cursed in such a way? Now I begin my fight with God. Now I truly begin to examine my faith, God's justice, God's compassion. Yeah.
Isn't this where he has a, just like a, wants you to do something else? Take something from you, but you're still here because he has a
Plan for you?
that. Isn't this where the plan comes in?
You said plan?
Plan. Plan.
Like a quote unquote plan after he took everything from you. I mean,
You know, the idea that your life is in the hands of God and ultimately God knows where or how your life should go. It's something that you will get to much later in your life. Okay, let me give you an example. There was a story some years ago. It was about a woman. Her name was Betty Eady. I think she's dead now, maybe not, I don't know. She wrote this book called Embraced by the Light. She had, I think, 3, 4 kids. She went for a routine surgery. It got really complicated. And then she became flatlined. And she was pronounced dead. Okay? And she had this near-death experience. And in one of the stories that she tells the rest of us readers is this, that there was this man who was drunk. He gets in the car and runs over this 18-year-old. And then the gods or these elders ask Betty Eady, well, what do you think? And Betty Eady says, well, the drunk is a criminal. He should be like sent to jail or this or that. And then she says gods came down, or these elders kind of revealed this curtain. And she came to realize that had this boy not been run over, at the age of 22, he would have been diagnosed with cancer. And he would have had a profoundly painful and miserable life and then death at the age of 25. And then the elders tell her, because the God loved this kid so much, he made this man go to the bar, get himself drunk, get in the car, drive over this kid, so he would have a sudden death. No pain. Okay? But it's very difficult to come to this place of acceptance as a mother or a father. It's something that you grieve, you mourn, your life is just turned upside down for many, many years. You're angry as hell. Okay? And then time passes. You were 20 when you lost your son or your daughter or something tragic happened to you. And you struggled. I mean, it was like this inner battle inside you. It was all bloody, do you see? Time passes, you begin to read books, you begin to kind of mature intellectually and emotionally. And then at the age of 40, you say, God takes and God gives and God takes. And it is true that your mom can come to you or your husband can come to you and say, so B, how come you couldn't say this when you were 20? You say, well, I didn't have the resources. I didn't read books at 20. I wasn't thinking at 20. I wasn't tested at 20. I wasn't challenged at 20. I didn't suffer any loss at 20. Do you see? So most of us, when something happens to you, there is a reason why we have this visionary saint, sage, prophet in this class named Stan. Why? Because it took him many, many years to accept the fact that he has this particular issue. It took him some more years to overcome those issues. It took him some more years to kind of come to class and say, I was this, I am proud to have been this, and I'm slowly overcoming it, and I'm actually creating shelters for people who've gone through my stuff. This is a book of Job, right there. Do you see? But he is who he is because of drugs, because of parents, because of society. Remove any of those elements, maybe he'd just be an idiot. But keep those elements in his life, now you have a man who has wisdom inside him. But he didn't become this way overnight. Again, it took him 30 years, no different than Job. Okay? So remember, being unto death, it forces you to kind of examine and ask really, really difficult questions. And when you confront difficult questions, you realize you are insufficient. You are far too incompetent to know what the answers are. Okay? So you feel despair. You feel anguish. You are lonely. You are sad, sorrowful, and pathetic. All right? Now, so how does authenticity come about? Something jolting needs to enter into your life that destroys your framework, the boundaries of your thoughts, your beliefs. And once it's shaken, like an earthquake, then you say, maybe what I was believing in wasn't all that good, wasn't right. This wise man here, when he was doing drugs, he thought it was fun. He was exercising his freedom, his independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He was pursuing that. Time passes and he says, oh man, this wasn't liberty at all. This wasn't life at all. And certainly it wasn't happiness. Okay? Now, so remember, none of us in this class can exercise authenticity, innocence, sincerity, as long as you live and believe in the status quo, as long as you believe that you know what you're doing, you know who you are. It doesn't work.